All right, how wonderful. It's so wonderful to have so many excited gardeners on the call. And, um, even with a little bit of snow in the forecast tomorrow, this is what we do in Vermont in the spring, right? We just get more and more excited until we're actually able to get out there and get our hands dirty. So let's keep stoking that fire today with this awesome project of Slow Food USA. Um, as Margaret alluded to, I have been involved with slow food for a very long time. My um, let's see. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Um, I I was a farmer in my former life. My husband and I moved to Vermont from Colorado in 2002 to start our little farm at the Intervale that was there for 16 years. Here, the Intervale is here in Burlington, and it was called Half Pint Farm, and we specialized in very specialty crops for chefs and for gardeners and very amazing cooks that are just home cooks that are excited about interesting varieties. And so at some point along the way, I had read a cookbook that mentioned slow food and talking about people who grew food and saved seeds and, shared those passions with area chefs. And I was just like, this is my dream. I want to be involved with whatever this is. And I found out Vermont had their own chapter already, and I got involved. And then I found out Slow Food had a biodiversity arm. And with my passion for growing, and my passion for seeds, and my passion for eating, it was a perfect match. And I'm happy to report that, you know, over a dozen years later, I feel like this arm of Slow Food has only grown and gotten more strong over the years. And as we all know, in the age of climate change, I think biodiversity and saving the bees and all of these kinds of um, things that we must consider in this modern time have gotten a lot more play than they used to. So that is fortunate that other, organizations and libraries are keeping up with modern times and moving forward with helping to contribute by keeping diversity in our backyards. So that's sort of the focus of Plant a Seed. Um, Slow Food USA is a chapter of the larger international organization of slow food, which is based in Italy. And Slow Food has so many projects. I like to tell people that Slow Food is like a giant wheel with a million spokes, and at the center of that wheel is the reason for being for Slow Food, which is providing food and saving food that is good, clean, and fair. And different arms and spokes of the wheel interpret good, clean, and fair a little bit differently. But at Slow Food Vermont, the way we interpret it is food that tastes good, and food that is clean is food that has been grown in a clean way and like in an organic way in clean soil, that kind of thing. And fair is that everything along the whole food production line has been treated in a fair way. So fair wages, the animals have been treated fairly, and the workers that tend them have been treated fairly, and the seeds in the soil have been treated fairly as well. So good, clean, and fair is at the center of it. And there's a project that Slow Food International had spearheaded years and years and years ago called the Arc of Taste, because one of the things that they realized was there are so many varieties of seeds, plants, fruits, trees, and breeds of animals that are falling out of favor because of the commercialization of food. And so, you've all probably heard the statistics about like 50% of our food is basically 12 crops, that are being focused on in the world of growing, of industrialized growing. And yet there's, you know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of varieties of food out there that contribute to a biodiverse planet, but also a biodiverse um, diet for all of us. So seeing this, they thought, you know what, let's start cataloging all these varieties that are in danger of going extinct. And then these varieties of seeds and these breeds and species of animals that live amongst us not only contribute to our, livelihood in some cases, but also they are often tied to a people's identity. And I think we can all relate to that. You know, we all have favorite recipes that connect us to our grandmothers and our grandparents, or, you know, things that we grew in our gardens as children alongside our mothers and fathers. And I think, you know, we can all relate to that concept of this is what connects us not just to our land, but to our past and our future. And one of my favorite people involved with slow food, Denisa Livingston, who is a Navajo woman, um, she she's the first person that said this quote, and I think we've heard it other places too. But um, she said, you know, not only are we our ancestors' wildest dreams, but are we are the future ancestors. So caretaking for all of these um, plants and animals is our it's our responsibility. And so one of the ways we can do that is participating in something like this program called Plant a Seed. So thank you so much for your interest in carrying on all of these this hard work that we're all trying to do. Um, so every year, Slow Food USA, for the past about 5 years or so, has created this project called Plant a Seed, where they go into the Ark of Taste, which is this catalog that I mentioned of all of these endangered foods, and they select as an assortment of um, of foods of seeds that they think would grow well across America. So it's something that, you know, isn't necessarily super specific to one locale. That, you know, if we have a variety from one part of the country, it might not grow so great up here in Vermont, that kind of thing. They try and select something that grows great every place. So, and I believe it's five, yeah, it's always about 5 items. And they try to pick some roots, some leaves, some shoots, some fruits, and, you know, some grains, and try to get a nice diverse mix of things. Not all tomatoes and not all peppers, but, you know, some fun things like grains and some root vegetables. So this year's mixture is really exciting. And Margaret, before I move on to the specific varieties, is there anything you want to jump in and contribute with?
No, I don't think
Anything?
so. I guess I should make sure that everybody can hear you. One person was having some trouble
Okay.
accessing the audio, but I haven't heard from anybody else. So um, I hope everybody can see the screen okay. I always forget to ask about that part too. So,
I can see
if not, I'd say, yeah, let's go on and tell us about what's inside all of these.
what's in the amazing packet this year.
Yep.
Awesome. So what's inside this year? We have some fruits, and we have some shoots, and we have some peppers, and we have some grains, and some roots. This is super exciting. And as a former grower, I can tell you I've grown 2 of these varieties professionally, and they're such good varieties. The Jimmy Nardello pepper and the Aunt Molly's ground cherry. But we'll just go left to right. I'll start with the Old Carolina tomato on the screen there. It's a beautiful beefsteak tomato, which means up here it'll take most of the summer to get a good ripe fruit. You could start looking to see that sucker come ripe around probably August or so. Um, the beefsteak tomatoes are, or sorry, what I meant to say is the bicolor tomatoes are some of the most sweet tomatoes that exist. That red and yellow mottled color is just, oh, you're going to be so excited to slice one of those open. And they're like a galaxy when you open them up. They're just ribbed with red veins and orange veins, and the seeds are delicious. And they really remind you that a tomato is a fruit, you know, because they almost taste, some people say they even have a fruity flavor. But one of the coolest things about every single seed or breed that is on the Ark of Taste is it comes along with a very great story. And that is one of the most lovely things about heirloom seeds is they're always tied to people, places, and families. The Old Carolina tomato came to us by way of a grower in Kentucky who was just at a seed swap. And I know a lot of you have done seed swaps in the past, and know how exciting those can be when people come with really things that they've been saving for a long time. And that's how this gentleman came into these seeds, someone came up to his stand where he had all his little seeds that he was sharing with whoever came by, and this gentleman said, I have some tomato seeds from some farmer I know who has had them in their freezer for 50 years. Would you like some? And of course, if you're a grower and someone comes up to you and says that, the answer is always yes. Yes, I want those seeds. And so he grabbed the seeds and he gave him 10 seeds. And those 10 seeds, he got 70% germination from, which means 7 out of the 10 actually grew, which is remarkable that you would get 50-year-old seeds that grew. And he realized, he grew them out and he got these gorgeous tomatoes. And he was just like, oh my goodness, I realized I'd never got the guy's name. I have no idea about where they came from. And then pandemic times hit, and suddenly he had all this time on his hands. So he created an Instagram page to sort of start advertising his other seeds. And this was one of the ones he profiled. And that gentleman found him through Instagram and said, that was me. Those are my seeds. And so they reconnected, and he's like, I have so many questions for you. Where did these come from? What's the story? And he just had the name of the farmer, which is escaping me at the moment. But so he got the name of the person and started doing research and was able to locate the family through and all of you are researchers. I can imagine you loving this story, but that he found through the Yellow Pages archives, this farm and the name, and it turns out they still had a farm store. And so he located the family, and the daughter of the person who was saving all of these seeds was still there. And she said that it was her father who saved these seeds, and they had been in the freezer forever. And then he passed on. And then her husband, who loved tomatoes and had eaten this tomato before, was like, we have to save these. These are remarkable. And so he kept them in a freezer, and he has since passed on. So she didn't have a straight line, but she had a pretty good idea that they were actually had been in the freezer continuously for like 68 years. So it's even a more remarkable story than we originally thought. So when in doubt, when you're saving seeds, throw them in the freezer. They'll be okay. So it's a really sweet story. And he was so happy to be able to tell her that his farm was growing them out for this project, and that hundreds of people across the country were going to be celebrating this tomato. So that's a pretty cool story. And I cannot wait to eat this one. This is one I've not eaten yet. Cool. So let's see. So that's the tomato in the pack. And then we're going to move on to the Jimmy Nardello. And Jimmy is one of my favorite peppers of all time. And anyone who grows Jimmy loves Jimmy. They are prolific. They are gorgeous. They look like a pepper tree that just has gorgeous drooping ornaments on it. They get red really readily. And those of you that have grown peppers in Vermont know sometimes it takes forever for peppers to ripen to red. And this is one that is just, so it will keep giving. It keeps giving every year in the garden. It's considered a frying pepper. So for the culinary folks in the group, that's a thin-skinned pepper. You never have to peel it. You don't have to roast it and peel it. You can just chop it up and put it in your dishes. It's a very sweet pepper. And this is a fun one at farmers markets, having been the grower of them. I've often had to explain to people, I know they look like they're going to hurt you, but they don't. They are so delicious. They're sweet. We would eat them on the farm as snacks. You just go buy the plant and grab one and munch on it as you're walking around. Great to saute, great raw. It's spectacular. And this is a really beautiful immigration story, because the Nardello family was based in Basilicata in Italy, which is a pepper growing region of Italy. And when they immigrated to the United States in I think it was 1887, the mom of that family had literally sewed these peppers into the hem of her dress that she went on the boat on. And when she got to America, and actually they settled in Connecticut. And so Basilicata is on the coast, and they swear up and down and left and right that the reason their peppers are super delicious is because they always had that ocean air was contacting those pepper plants all the time. And so when they moved to the United States, they looked for a similar climate, and they decided Connecticut in the summer is a lot like that. So they were on the coast. I can attest that you don't have to be on the coast to get a great Jimmy Nardello pepper. The seed is very strong and vibrant. And um, if you want to save these seeds, these are some of the easiest seeds to save. You just have to have a ripe red pepper that it doesn't have to be dry on the plant even, just when it's red, it's ripe. And that means the seeds are ripe and they're ready. And you just literally would slit it, scoop some of the seeds out, dry them on a paper towel or a paper plate until they're dry, and then they're good. They're good for at least 4 years. I don't know of any 70 or 60-year freezer pepper stories, but who knows? You could try. But Jimmy is a wonderful, wonderful pepper. And so Jimmy Nardello is the one it's named for him because he was the fourth son of this immigrating family, and he became the seed caretaker of the family. And so when he was very elderly, he decided to donate them to the Seed Savers Exchange so that he wanted them to protect the seeds. So that's where the seeds come from for this project. It's such a responsibility, isn't it? I mean, my goodness, to be the bearer of a seed is so, what an honor. And also, I you're carrying a history with it. So it just feels very heavy, but also what a lovely thing to be sharing with the world. The King Philip corn. This is a new one to me, but there are so many indigenous corn varieties in America. And this is such a sweet one to include in this project for so many reasons. Um, those of you in New England and particularly like Massachusetts and Rhode Island area might know about King Philip, but he was the son of Chief Massasoit of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe in Massachusetts that the original pilgrims met up with when they landed. And King Philip was his name was Metacom, and his English name, they called him King Philip. So it's actually named after Massasoit's son, but his English name was King Philip. And this is a flint corn. It's a red flint corn. So it's the type of corn that would be used for grinding into flour. It's not a sweet corn, but it's a very flavorful corn, and it's beautiful. It's just such a gorgeous corn. Um, what is very sweet about this corn project is that this was a variety that was sort of absorbed and improved over the decades and hundreds of years to become a more productive variety. But the original strain was still found in gardens. And so, like, families would still be growing it. And that seed got donated, I think, to William Moyes Weaver, who is sort of the godfather of a lot of us seed lovers out there. You'll see his name crop up a lot if you go into seed saving, much more um, than just buying packets. If you look into it and look into other seed libraries, you'll see his name. Anyway, he said that this particular variety of King Philip corn is an unimproved variety. So this is like the closest to the original variety. And so he sort of kept it alive. And now they've returned this particular variety back to the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe to grow out for this particular project. So this corn is back home, and it's sort of been repatriated to its original soils, and it's thriving, it's gorgeous, it's amazing, and we get to benefit from it. But it's just such a sweet story because the tribe has it back, and we get to eat it too. And this is some of the first first grow outs from that project, which is really exciting. All right, number 4 is going to be the early scarlet horn carrot, which is super exciting because this is sort of it's an original baby carrot. And it's, a lot of people say baby carrots aren't a thing. We've been duped. And that is true. The machine of commercialized food production and capitalism definitely has commodified baby carrots, but they are a thing. They existed. They existed in nature. And the early scarlet horn carrot is one of those. It's what we call Nance type carrot, and it's that particular shape where it's very triangular. It's kind of a really blocky carrot. Um, and they're about 5 inches long. So it's not like a baby carrot, but it's, it's a chunker. And they are a dark red. They have a lot of keratin. They have a ton of the red and orange carotenoid, really good vitamins in them that give them that deep color. In some soils, they'll even get kind of red, which is just their expression of their perfect selves. That's why the scarlet is in the name. Like when they're really loving life, they do get that red color. That means probably the soil content is exactly what they want. But regardless, you're going to get a sweet carrot. And this is another indigenous variety that is grown out by the Metis tribe in the Red River settlement. And it's been there since the early 1800s. And the original seed came from them. It's still there. They're still growing it. And this seed was sourced from those communities. So we're getting some really awesome original source seed for this project, which is just such an honor, I think. So I've also not grown this one. I'm super excited to taste it. I love me a good baby carrot. One tip as a grower to all you folks who maybe have never grown carrots in the past is, the seeds are so tiny, and when you go to plant them, you're going to be inclined to just dump seed in the ground. And I understand, but they crowd really easily and then they don't grow big because once they're big, they are going to need all that space to express themselves fully. So at some stage, once you got your little threads coming up out of the soil of the little green leaves, you're going to want to thin them out so that they have a little bit of room. It's always hard to thin plants, right? Because the little babies and you're pulling them out. But guess what? Carrot greens are edible, especially when they're little like that. Just toss them in a salad. You'll be happy. All right, so that's the carrot. And then the Aunt Molly's ground cherry. This has had a huge resurgence in popularity. I bet a lot of us have had them in the past. They are part of the solanum family, which is the big family that includes actually tomatoes and peppers and actually potatoes. Um, but it's the family that it branches off of is called the Physalis family, and so that's like the nightshade family. So a lot of time, a lot of years, this was considered like a poisonous fruit until they saw that Native American folks were eating them like by the bushel load, and they're like, oh, those are edible. Yes, they are, and they're delicious. And there's a ton of varieties out there that aren't delicious, actually. So there's a lot of varieties that are really sour. So that's why it's really nice to find some selected varieties that have been sort of not improved, but just encouraged to flourish and really express themselves well with lots and lots of grow outs. And Aunt Molly's is one of those. There's sort of two paths that the Physalis family takes, and one is the tomatillo, which is more of a savory Physalis. It's also considered a husk tomato. I'm sure you've heard it called that before. Um, and then there's the sweet ones, which are the ground cherries. So they're considered the closest in relationship, the tomatillos and the husk cherries. Um, Husk cherry, ground cherry, Cape gooseberry. They have about 12 names. Everyone sort of got their own name for them, but the official seed company name for them is sort of settled on ground cherry. Um, so there's some really, you'll see a ton of variety of these out in the world. If you travel and go to farmers markets in the world, you'll always see ground cherries at farm stands just everywhere. Everywhere I've ever traveled, and I've traveled, I mean, not last year, but in previous years, I always go to farmers markets and I always see ground cherries. And like in Hawaii, there's some that are like as big as limes. They're so big, like bigger than the biggest tomatillos I've ever seen. And then there's these little itty bitty teeny weeny ones that I've seen in Italy, and they're super sweet and interesting. So there's a huge wide variety of ground cherries, and they adapt really readily to different climatic zones. So you might even find that you will grow a ground cherry. You might grow this one, the Aunt Molly's ground cherry, in your yard, and then somewhere else, like in southern Vermont, will grow the same thing, and theirs might look even a little bit different. And then that just shows you how close to their wild selves they actually are, and they haven't been commodified and hybridized and tried to fit into a genetic box. They're able to sort of be their wild selves out there in the world. And I love that about them. Once folks in America in the 1800s started understanding that they were edible and amazing, they put them in preserves, they put them in pies. There's a lot of ground cherry pie recipes out there. I love them I actually love their little tiny seeds. They're a very seed heavy fruit, but they're kind of have that nice little popping quality when you eat them, sort of like poppy seeds. So texturally, I find them really interesting. I almost feel like when they're ripe on the plant, they taste a little bit like jam already, which is kind of cool. They're really good. I call it one of the primary grazing fruits of the garden because they don't all ripen at once. And so another little tip about this one, if you decide to grow it, is later in the season, and they're like an August, September fruit. Later in the season, when you start seeing them husk up, because their husk when they're unripe is a green husk, like in the picture there. And when they're ripe and ready to eat is when they have the darker sort of papery husk. When they're at that stage, they fall off the plant readily. So you get this like carpet of fruit and you got to pick them up off the ground. They're a ground cherry. That's why they have that name. And I've known a lot of growers to just put a blanket on the ground or a sheet to harvest them a little bit easier. So you just pull the sheet out and then sift them into a bag or whatever. Because otherwise it's a fairly tedious fruit to harvest one by one off the ground. But totally worth it, extremely delicious. And they do like to self-sow. If you miss a few fruits on the ground, they'll plant themselves and you might have some volunteers next year, which is never a bad thing. So that's those specific varieties. And I'd love to field questions about any of them. I see some questions about the Jimmy Nardello being hot. Yeah, and I already covered that. Any other questions that?
There was one about the ground cherry being related to the tomatillo, and I think
Yep.
you covered that one as well.
They're kissing cousins. They're real close.
Oh, and looks like somebody has a question. Amy, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm wondering about, so we are getting some raised beds to have in our community. So will these, I'm thinking the corn maybe not so much, but will the other varieties work in a raised bed? It says the depth is 8.5 inches deep. And it said that it would be okay for carrots, but I just.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say go for it. And respect the spacing recommendations for things. The ground cherry needs like 2 to 4 feet. So that is actually a great one to even put on the edge of a yard or something, like it doesn't have to go in a box. That one would be a good, like, put it by the sidewalk or put it, somewhere else, because it can take up a ton of room. And the corn, I would devote a box to the corn. If a smaller box, obviously. I don't know how many seeds are coming in this packet, but whatever their spacing is, they need to be planted sort of in a block because they're wind pollinated. So the tassels need to be able to touch each other. But just plant those suckers in a block and then maybe have something planted next to them that doesn't mind getting shaded a little bit by corn. So like lettuces would be okay next to corn.
And then we had a question about if the stories and tips are included in the kits, and they are. And then at the end of this presentation, we also have some links, and I'll email the presentation to everybody afterwards. So you'll have the basics, you'll have the recording of Mara's explanations, and you'll have those links as well. Yeah. So any other looks like a couple more questions. We do grow the corn. Is there use for it other than grinding into flour?
Feeding squirrels. Squirrels love corn. You could just leave them and you could be decorational. It's pull them out and put them shock them, you know, like bind them together and put them on your doorstep for fall. You know, they're beautiful ears.
They are really pretty.
Um,
And then the last one about if you don't get the kit, is there another way to get the seeds? And you can still order them from Slow Food USA, and we have a link to that at the end as well. And I would encourage people, depending on, you know, how big your garden plot is at your library, you know, maybe if you get some and your neighboring library doesn't get a kit, you could share them because they're,
Absolutely.
you know, you get a full pack of each variety of seeds. So that's a lot of seeds to work with.
Yeah, and things like the tomato and the pepper, you know, maybe you're only wanting to grow one or two of those plants, depending on your how much space you have, and you're probably getting a dozen seeds in each packet. So, and the germination is going to be really great on all of these. So, you feel free to
So
share.
then you can save them and next year you'll have even more.
Exactly. Nothing's more generous than a plant. You know, they give you so many seeds per fruit. And it's just such a joy to be able to be the caregiver of these things. I do want to mention that Slow Food USA just had their first seed summit, which happened in February, March. And
February, I think, yeah.
yeah, and they had such amazing panelists. They have a whole session on the plant a seed kit with the people who grew out these seeds for us. And it's only like an hour long presentation. And all of those, every single one of the sessions from the Seed Summit is online for free. So feel free to go to the Slow Food website. And I think I gave Margaret the link to this particular talk.
Yes, it's at the end
Wanted
of
to
our,
revisit that.
yep, for sure.
Lots of great resources there. Slow Food USA did a whole thing during the pandemic called Slow Food Live, which was basically a Skillshare session. And like every week they had dozens and dozens of sessions with, you know, cooks, seed savers, butchers, mixologists, anything having to do with food in our slow food community. And they gave these incredible talks. So there's a spectacular library of things that can give you great ideas for other things. And they feature a lot of the items from the Ark of Taste because that's kind of the world we swim in, is trying to toot the horn of all of these amazing varieties and get them back on our plates.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is pretty basic. I don't know if you have anything in particular you want to share about this, Mara.
Yeah, no, I mean, I find that a lot of folks feel a lot of pressure when they get a seed kit because they're like, oh no, now I have this responsibility to do this right. And the wonderful thing about gardening is you always have another chance next year. So don't feel pressure to get it perfect the first time. Do your best, plant what you can, you know, read up on how to plant things that you don't know how to plant. And I bet you'll get awfully close to success, if not actually nail it the first time. Give away seeds that you don't use. Give away with some of the food if you guys aren't able to use it in your programming. I'm sure a lot of you have ideas already of what to do with the harvest. And then absolutely save your seed. The programming surrounding gardening that I'm sure you're all finding is just like keeps on giving, right? Not only can you just plant seeds, you can educate about the particular varieties, you can actually eat together, and then you can have this whole seed saving project at the end of it. So the circle of life with this kind of project is really keeps on giving.
Absolutely. All right. So that was a quick primer into what you need to do. And oh, there was one question there. How do you know if you are receiving a kit? We will decide by the end of the week. So I will get back to everybody about whether or not you get a kit. And I'm really hoping we'll give as many kits out as we can.
Yes.
We actually doubled the amount of kits available. Originally it was going to be 10. We now have 20 kits available. So excited that we'll have a few more to offer.
And
All
then
right.
the critical question, I think I already answered a lot of this, but yeah, I alluded to this fact that there are over 30,000 edible types of plants all over the world. I think there's more. I think there's just so many more. And biodiversity is not a new concept, but it is a current crisis. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about people getting rid of their lawns and putting gardens in the front, putting gardens in the back. We don't need grass unless you have animals that eat the grass, obviously. Um, it's a great movement. It's an amazing time to be a gardener because there's so much that's available to us now. And today, nearly 75% of the world's food comes from just 12 plant and 5 animal species. And just how boring is that, right? There's so many more things we could be eating. And these kinds of projects are what highlight that for me. And 50% of our plant-derived calories come from wheat, corn, and rice. Carbs are delicious, and I love every single one of those things, but dang it, there are so many other yummy things that we could be getting calories from. And when you grow them in your garden, they're so good for you because there's no travel. You're not losing nutrients in the traveling. So yeah, there's so many reasons, and I love that we have just 4. We could talk for 70 hours about why
That's right.
this is a good
This
idea.
is a whole other presentation, or maybe
We really
like,
distilled it down to
pulse.
the essentials here today.
That's right. Trying to get everybody excited. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. And then
So here is, whoops, sorry, it just mouse slipped. You could talk more about this than I could, Mara. This is a specific program, but I thought it was kind of cool because there were some nice resources if you are interested in starting to save seeds.
yeah, there's a new project Slow Food spearheaded called Share a Seed, and it was out of this Slow Food DC chapter. This came around because of the pandemic, because seeds are harder and harder to find because everyone is gardening. It's a good problem to have, but it was actually a little bit of a crisis for a lot of growers because seed companies didn't have the backstock that they normally have because so many people were buying seeds. So in fact, I know a lot of my current farmer friends had some of their seed houses that they were using were prioritizing farmers over gardeners this year to make sure that the farmers got the seed first and the gardeners got the seed second. And so because of this very amazing slow food chapter in Washington, D.C. was like, you know what, we should be sharing seeds. We should be making this a little bit more of a access issue. And a lot of you, I think, have some seed libraries. I know Charlotte does. And so you're already aware of how valuable sharing seeds can be. But if you wanted to do a little bit more research, Margaret and I have compiled this really nice list of stuff here that the Slow Food DC folks put together for us as well. There's seed laws out there that I tend to ignore because I feel like humans just need seeds. So and there's not that much policing, but it's, you gotta mention it. And as far as seed traveling with seeds cross borders and stuff like that. And seed saving, there's so many community seed networks, and some of the specific ones that we mentioned today is the Organic Seed Alliance and Seed Savers Exchange. If you're not familiar with the Seed Savers Exchange, get familiar with them. It's an incredible resource, and they have this thing called the Seed Savers Yearbook. So they have their catalog. Seed Savers Exchange has their catalog that goes out to the public. But if you're a member, you can get the Seed Savers Yearbook, which is like a giant catalog, and you can get it in print or you can get it online. And that's just community members across the country that have extra seeds, and you can access it from them directly. And there's so many more varieties that are in the yearbook than there are on the website. So definitely, they're a great resource, and they're very generous with their knowledge. And then of course the Slow Food Share a Seed. There's a great website that they created to talk a little bit more about how to be connected. There's, I think, 5 pilot chapters that are sort of spearheading the Share a Seed project just this year. And I believe they're in each of the regions of the country. So I can, if you go to the website, I mean, it's a very new project to me as well, so I don't know the super ins and outs of how it's functioning, but I know the main goal is if you have too many seeds, how do you get them in the hands of people that need them? It's a way to share. So it's like a seed swap, but a little bit more diverse. And yeah, then some resources there for how to organize a seed swap. Yeah.
And one question about a scarlet runner bean, if that's an heirloom variety. And maybe it depends on the type, I don't know. But
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Oh, we did a seed bank for a couple of years. My favorite was Scarlet Runner beans. It is an heirloom seed. And so one of the ways you know that a seed is an heirloom is if, well, heirloom and open pollinated are sort of the two terms to be thinking about. Heirloom usually refers to the fact that we know where it came from, we know who put it in the seed bank, we know its story, we know who's been fostering it. It's a little bit more, got a little bit more of a historical legacy attached to it. Open pollinated is the term that we want to marry with heirloom every time, because open pollinated means this, it's not a hybridized seed. So that means the seed that comes out of the plant is a seed you can plant in the ground and get that same plant. So with the Scarlet Runner beans, that's a great example, because those gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous seeds, if you've not seen these seeds, they'll make you drool with desire. They're so beautiful. They're like purple mottled with a lavender, and sometimes they're black and they're mottled with these speckly, beautiful dots. They look like jewels. They're so gorgeous. But once you harvest those seeds, you can eat them dry, you can eat them fresh, you can eat the flowers, you can eat the greens. They're just, every part of this plant is edible, but also those seeds you can plunk right back in the ground and you'll get the same thing next year. So that's definitely, and it's someone's mentioning Jack and the Beanstalk. Yeah, they're very vigorous growers. For sure. And do we have one more slide there, Margaret?
we've
Or
got a couple more slides, things you've sort of already touched on, the Arc
Cool.
of Taste.
yeah, the living catalog, the Arc of Taste. There's hundreds of varieties being added every year. So if you have look through the catalog. It's super interesting. You can sort it by region. You can sort it by type of thing. It's a pretty diverse and easy to use catalog. And I think it kicks you to the international page now. So you can actually search for varieties in any country, and there's a ton being saved everywhere. But if you have one that hasn't been added to the Arc and you're like, wow, why isn't this thing on the Arc of Taste? It's so rare, it's so amazing, I don't see it there. You can nominate varieties yourself, just as an average person. So there's a nomination form if you go to the Arc of Taste page. But yeah, I'm on the Arc of Taste committee for the Northeast, and it's just always so fun to see what varieties come down from gardeners who are like, I did not see this on the list, and it is so special, and this is why, and we need to save it, and this is why. And it's just so many more beautiful stories.
Yeah, I think, and all of the plant a seed varieties are Arc of Taste. Am I correct in that? Yeah.
Yeah, every year they are.
All right, so we've got Arc of Taste, and then we have a poem from Wendell Berry about how amazing it is to plant seeds. So I had to put that in there as my
Yeah.
little library tidbit. And there it is. If anybody wants more information, these are all links. And then I had mentioned in the chat, I would love to start a seed library garden network. So email me if you're interested in joining me for that, for sure. Because I know all of us are doing a lot of this, and it would be awesome for us to share information.
Yeah,
so I
and
think
if you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say, you know, if this is your introduction to slow food, you are in good company. I think there's like there's over 200 chapters in America, and there's thousands of chapters across the globe. And if you care about food in the same way we've been talking about it, just rest assured that there's hundreds of thousands of people in the world who agree with you that food is important and food should be saved and shared and celebrated above all else. And I've always used my slow food membership as a different kind of passport. And so when I go to other states, even, I'll connect with their slow food chapter there and be like, tell me where to eat, tell me what's the best thing. And you just create so many wonderful relationships, and you sort of get the inside scoop on the food scene wherever you travel if you connect with your slow food community. So yeah, I hope to see you guys at another event. Hopefully we can meet in person someday.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have a meal together someday. That'd be even more amazing. And it would be lovely to see your gardens this summer.
Yeah, that actually would be an awesome thing, is to um, collect photos of everybody's gardens. I guess we've got a few more minutes. So are there any last questions? There's a few comments in the chat. Yes, those are links on the last slide, and I will be sending out the slides to everybody. So you should have all those links. And any other questions before we send you off and to the world, back to your libraries?
Yeah, well,
You said you were going to decide about which libraries are going to get kits the end of this week. Did I hear that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, because we know, I mean, even though it's supposed to snow tomorrow, we all are thinking gardening, and some of these things need to get planted sooner rather than later. So.
yeah, the snow
Great.
just fertilizes our garden beds, so we
Yeah.
want that.
That's right.
Yep. So excellent. Somebody's peas are planted. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
mine are too. I planted them last week.
So yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you again, Mara, for
course.
walking
Thank you
us
for
through
having
this whole thing and giving us such great information.
Lovely.
And yeah, please be in touch if you want to be a part of this whole thing, because as you could tell, I'm very excited about it. So.
Mara, your enthusiasm is really wonderful and contagious.
Thanks, Renee. Yeah, no, it's why there's so many things to eat in a lifetime, you know? It's like, why not eat the best things?
Exactly. I am wholeheartedly for that. I love to eat myself.
Lovely. Well, it's nice to let y'all in on this sweet secret about the Ark of Taste. It's a fun catalog to move through, and if you're a grower, it's just even more delightful. And you know, there's so many animals on there that you maybe have never heard of. Like there's certain kinds of sheep and certain kinds of chickens and things, and it's, you know, you can find the growers through the Ark of Taste, and there's quite a few of those breeds and things being grown here in Vermont even, which is really remarkable. I keep trying to encourage all the farmers I know to grow out all of these things so we can taste them. At one time, the Ark of Taste motto was "Eat it to save it," which is kind of a weird thing. It's why we dropped it, because it was kind of strange. But you get the gist. You know, it's like the more of us that get to taste these things, the more we want to protect them, because they're so delicious and amazing. And you know how it is to share things you love with other people. It's like a gift. So if we can get more of these things on plates and share the food with more people, I would say we're doing a pretty good job.
And I would just add one more thing. One of these links here is for Slow Food, Slow Books, which is another new initiative for slow food that I think we librarians can relate to. And it's just a curated list of books that relate to slow food topics, either quite directly or tangentially. But if you all have any suggestions for books that might, relate to food, I would love to know about them. I'm on the board of the Slow Books group there. And yeah, take a look at that page too, because there's some really great resources.
I have one to add, actually, Margaret. My dear friend John Forty, who is with Slow Food New Hampshire and Maine, just released his book. It's been a labor of love forever, and it's called The Heirloom Gardener. And his name's
Ooh.
John, John Forti, Forti. And it's got so much lore and just mythology and recipes and garden know-how, and he's just a font of knowledge.
I'm gonna get
And
that.
I know he's interested in doing a little mini book tour, and he'd love to connect with slow food chapters and for certainly libraries. So if
Awesome.
anyone's interested in maybe doing a collaborative something with John, check out his book and look at the stuff for his book, and I can for sure connect us.
Oh, that would be awesome. That might be a really
Let me write that in the chat. Sure, I'll just type it in there for you.
thanks, Mara. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ideas bubbling up. So this is really great.
Yeah, and his book is so beautiful. He was able to get some Mary Azarian woodcuts to be part of his
Oh my
whole
God.
illustration, and it's just, it's a gorgeous book. It'd be an amazing gift, actually. So anyway,
Very
that's
cool.
my addition.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And I'll be in touch about the kits. And Mara, we'll hope that you'll be joining us again soon.
Always
Okay.
enjoy. Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.